What's up everybody, it's Victon here with a juicy guide for you guys, the in-game version of my Freezing Pulse and Ice Spear Totems Hierophant. I'll start off by saying this was easily the smoothest league start I have ever had. Between the mapping playstyle where you freeze everything with Freezing Pulse and the insane boss damage with Ice Spear, I've been able to clear the entire game, complete my Atlas, and now I'm focusing on doing uber pinnacle boss farming. I even got all the way to tier 16 maps and killed my first Shaper with only a 4-link Soul Mantle. Now with what I would call a full set of in-game gear, I've spent about 20 divines to achieve 51 million damage with 74 million burst damage. This has allowed me to farm Uber Shaper and the Feared for all my currency needs. I'm also pretty happy with the way the build progressed. I never felt like it started slowing down in damage, and gear upgrades always had clear paths that each of which led to you noticeably feeling stronger. All that said, I did of course learn some things along the way with the build and the league, and that's what this guide is about. I'm hoping to bring you guys a complete picture of everything you need to know to start taking down the in-game content, both bosses and difficult juiced maps. I'll also do some more commonly asked questions along the way to help you guys out with some of the questions you might have had about the build. Now, if you haven't watched the League Start Guide for this build yet and you do choose to play this build, I highly suggest you check it out. It is on my channel. I was very detailed about the leveling process and the first set of gear that you're going to need to get to start rolling, and it should help you out quite a bit. And before we get into the in-game version of the build, as always, if this guide or any of my other content helps you out in any way, please hit those like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment below saying what build you guys have been playing this league and if you plan to give this build a try. If you really enjoy the content and want to support my channel, consider taking a look at my Patreon or have a super helpful community Discord, and I actually do personal build reviews over there all the time for you guys. I also stream on Twitch as much as possible, certainly a lot more in the beginning of the league, so come on over there and say hi if you do see me online. The link for all of that is going to be in the video description. And without further ado, let's hop straight into the path of building. Okay, so let's briefly go over the tree, and we're going to start off by going over what I hear a ton of people talking about when they kind of just glance at the POB and see the low effective HP pool and absolutely lose their minds and call it a bad build. So what I've been saying to people is this: the build is squishy, but it's still very safe to play. It's a weird combo of things to say, but it's absolutely true, and you won't know until you actually play it yourself. The playstyle is being arranged and having your totems do your damage while you avoid the damage. It's just a super strong combo, and on top of that, your Freezing Pulse, while mapping, Freezing Pulse, it literally freezes the whole screen of mobs, and it feels super comfortable to play. You still have Mind Over Matter and just about 3k mana, so you are able to take a few big hits, but yes, there will be times when you die. This is not a hardcore build. Personally, I'll take that as a trade-off for being able to have a smooth playstyle and insane single target boss damage. Like I said, I was able to comfortably kill Shaper on a 4-link. Not too many builds have the power like that. And going further, very few builds out there can reach 70 million DPS for under 20 divines worth of gear. And I'll take that for a couple deaths any day. So yeah, just wanted to get that out of the way before we get into the guide itself. Now back to the tree. First, do note that I have a notes section for leveling, but again, if you really want to level this build, I'd suggest checking out the League Start Guide. Anyways, we're basically focusing on a lot of totem damage nodes, crit multi, lots of mana nodes, and then over here we have some curse effect nodes, which are actually a ton of damage. And then this guy right here even has some nice curse reduction on it. And lastly, once you get Coward's Legacy Belt, you're going to pick up Pain Attunement for 30% more damage. And as far as when I switched over to the Cluster Jewels, it was about level 90 when I made the change. But honestly, you can really just do it whenever you want when you get your first large and medium clusters, since they really do provide a ton of damage. Your large has Prismatic Heart, which helps a lot with elemental resistances, and also Disorienting Display, which blinds enemies near your totems when placed, so pretty nice quality of life cluster. The first medium that you want to pick up should come with Sleepless Sentries for the free onslaught on totem placement. It is a huge boost overall clear speed and damage. And the other medium is just a full out damage cluster. Not too expensive either for these clusters, all can be rolled yourself or purchased for a couple divine each or less. As far as your ascendancy, we are Hierophant, of course, for all those juicy totem nodes. You're first going to pick up Purist of Faith at around level 35, which will allow you to start using Spark Totems to level with alongside getting Ancestral Bond for the 3 max totems. It's a huge damage spike and feels really good when you're leveling. From there we pick up Ritual of Awakening, which is a ton of damage, great life and mana regen, and allows us actually to pick up Mind Over Matter while leveling. Third, you get Conviction of Power, and lastly, Divine Guidance for some nice mana and damage. And that's it for the tree, so now let's move on over to the gem links. Okay, so first I want to make this clear because some people either misunderstood or didn't watch the full League Start guide, I don't know, but we do use Freezing Pulse to map with and do a single gem swap from Freezing Pulse to Ice Spear for bosses. I'm at the point where I actually don't swap my Freezing Pulse in maps anymore. Even Guardian maps, the bosses instantly die with Freezing Pulse, but if you do need to while you're gearing up, don't feel bad about switching it quickly to Ice Spear to take a boss down. Until you have good gear, yes, Freezing Pulse is not for bosses. And for in-game bosses and uber bosses, that's all Ice Spear, and it's a big boy damage amazingness. Moving on, for Freezing Pulse, we do have Freezing Pulse, Greater Multiple Projectiles, Hypothermia, Added Cold Damage, which by the way is only good if you have an Awakened added cold damage at level 5, because you're getting that +1 to cold gems. Until then, Cold Pin is actually better, just keep that in mind. Increased crit damage, and multi-totems. Your 4-link is actually going to be Freezing Pulse, GMP, crit damage, and multi-totems. Your 5th link, you're going to add in Hypothermia, and your 6th link, you're going to add in Cold Pin, or like I said, Awaken Added Cold, level 5. Same thing for Ice Spear, it's just a single swap from Freezing Pulse to Ice Spear when needed. We have a 4-link debuff setup with Vortex, Unbound Ailments, Bone Chill, and Arcane Surge. Firstly, I suggest putting this on your left click so you can auto-apply it while moving around. Next, we have Eternal Blessing and Hatred. Eternal Blessing is what allows us to have one single aura and not reserve any mana. We also have a cheeky little Cast on Death portal setup, but you could switch this to 2 of anything that you really want. It's whatever you prefer. Next, we have Punishment, Lightning Golem, and Frost Bomb. Keep in mind that Lightning Golem will die, it's quite annoying, and I really only use it at the beginning of boss fights to push that initial burst damage, which usually insta-kills bosses and you don't need it any further. We also have a Flame Dash, Arcane Cloak, and Arcane Surge set up for a nice shield and great damage boost. Personally, I have this on my spacebar, and I have my thumb constantly down, so it auto-casts as I walk around, or you could hold off and just use it when you need it for burst damage on boss fights. Lastly, we have all of our curses, and this is what is new to the build. We have Frostbite, Sniper's Mark, Elemental Weakness, all being auto-casted by throwing out an Arcanist brand. Super easy way to get triple damage curses on bosses very fast. And this perfectly ties into our next topic, the gear. We're actually going to start off with our ring since we were just talking about curses. We're now running the insane Anathema ring that came out with this league. I thought this thing was actually going to be a tier 1 or 0 unique when I first saw it, knowing how crazy it was going to be for Hierophants. Remember that our Ascendancy grants us 4 minimum power charges at all times, so that combo with this ring means we're permanently going to have 4 curses, which is crazy because curses got a huge buff this league on boss damage. The ring literally more than doubles your damage. We go from 25 million DPS to 50 million DPS, and that's not even accounting for punishment, which works when the boss is on low life. It's crazy, and it's cheap for the power that you get. I was blown away and super happy to put this in the build. 2 thumbs up for sure. Okay, what else? So our wands. We do eventually switch to wands from the super cheap early game Staff of Tyrann's Shiver. You want to look for wands with mods in this order of importance: cold spell gem levels, cast speed, crit multi, and as much spell damage as you can get. I got each of my 2 wands for about 2 divines each. For our helmet, you can actually use a Heat Shiver for quite a while, and from there you're going to get a Heat Shiver with Ice Spear that has +1 to projectile enchant, but eventually you can switch over to what I have here, which is a Blizzard Crown, also with that +1 to projectile enchant for a ton of extra damage. The plus to projectiles is actually what gives the Ice Spear the most amount of damage, so it's super nice to get that on your helmet for a ton of extra damage. It's also nice to be able to craft on it as well to get some extra resistances, some life, and even damage if you get Shaper influence on it too. For your body armor, we're of course going to go with a Soul Mantle because it is best for this type of totem build, as it comes with a free Spell Totem gem. Ideally, you want a corrupted 6 link with +2 to level projectile gems and also even +1 to all gems, but if you can't just get that +1 to all gems, I actually have a video coming out tomorrow night on the absolute best way to get a unique to 6 links. There's multiple tricks you can do to get almost any 6 link body armor for about 3 divines or even quite a bit less, so be on the lookout for that. For our gloves, we want to do something like this, with the increased damage with hits against chilled enemies for great damage. I also try and get dex on them if you can, it really does help. You should also try and get the implicits that give +1 to pierce, and more importantly, unnerve on hit. This is a 10% more multiplier, and it is really nice for damage. You can also get another pierce from the benchcraft here if you have an open prefix. For your boots, you just want as much resistance, life, and move speed as possible. Ideally also with some strength here too if you can. For implicits, most importantly, we're going to get that increased damage per endurance charge, which we constantly have 4 up, so it's a free 20% increased damage. For our amulet, we do get something like this with +1 to level of cold gems, crit multi, and cast speed, ideally with some dex. You'll want to anoint Mark the Prey for 10% more damage to enemies with Sniper's Mark on them, which should be all bosses, so it's just basically a 10% more multiplier, which is pretty nice for an anoint. This is actually a better amulet than Pandemonious. I get asked this a lot. It's a lot cheaper as well. I shit you not, I bought mine for 1 chaos. Obviously I got very lucky there, but even still, it's much cheaper than Pandemonious and more damage as well. For one of our rings, we're going to get Reduce Curse Effect, and ideally also cold damage against chilled enemies. This is important because our belt, the Coward's Legacy, which gives us a nice 30% more damage multiplier with Pain Attunement, but we also need to get 150% curse reduction instead of the normal 100%. So this, along with several jewels with up to 30% reduced curse effect, we can easily achieve that 150% threshold. Going back to our other ring, like I said before, we do want to get that juicy Anathema ring. For our flasks, we want a life flask with bleed immunity, I don't know how to say this, a Lavianga Spirit, which is just a nice mana flask with some quality of life, the Overflowing Chalice with use when charges are full enchant. This goes with our 2 damage flasks, the Diamond Flask with cast speed, or you can get more curse reduction here if you need it, and Dying Sun for a massive increase in damage. Like I said, projectiles on Ice Spear is the big boy damage, so getting +2 here is absolutely massive. As you can see, this flask alone makes us go from 51 to 64 million damage. It's an insane amount of damage from this flask, so we want to keep it up as much as possible, which is why it combos with that Overflowing Chalice. We did already talk about our cluster jewels, so for our curse reduction jewels, just try and get as much crit multi on them as possible and as high curse reduction as possible. And lastly, you want to get a self-flagellation with up to 20% increased damage per curse on you, which comes out to a crazy 180% increased damage when you have all 9 curses on you from your soul mantle. I am actually skipping Rain of Splinters in this version because that would be worth half the entire build as it is. So far, it's about 11 divines to get that, which is actually bonkers, but it will certainly be added in the min-maxed version of the build, which, by the way, gets upwards of 160 million DPS. Some of the highest DPS I have seen for bossing. And with that damage, the Uber Pinnacle bosses can literally be insta-faced. It's crazy, and I am very much looking forward to it. Okay, so yeah, that is the path of building. Let's head on over to the trade links. As normal, this is all going to be done through Better POE Trading app extension. Link is going to be in the description if you do need to download that. Go to the pastebin link in the description, go in it, and then copy the raw data there, and then come back to the trade site. We're going to go down and click import, and we're going to paste that in there, and there you go. I've also listed out each of these items in order of purchase importance, so you can kind of follow it like a progression path. It has everything you need to get geared up to the level that I am at right now. And that's it, guys. That's everything you need to know to build a successful Freezing Pulse Ice Spear Totem character. And more importantly, have fun along the way, because this build is super fun and it gets the job done. If you want to easily farm in-game bosses, all the while having a decent clear speed mapper, this build is for you, and I hope you do enjoy it. If you do enjoy it or any of my other guides, please hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I have a lot more content coming this week. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.